This is going to be another Game of Thrones Q&A video, so let's talk about house ancestral swords, bastard surnames, and will Sam become a wizard? So let's jump right in with our first question, and Eric writes, Jon is currently a bastard. If he is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark and born in the Tower of Joy, and Rhaegar did not marry Lyanna, wouldn't he still be a bastard by the name of Jon Sand? If they were not married, he would still be a bastard, but he would not have the name Jon Sand. So in the world of Ice and Fire, families name bastard children after the region where they grow up, not necessarily where they're actually born. So I believe that you were thinking here, since that Jon was born in Dorne in the Tower of Joy, he would have the surname Sand, but in fact because Lyanna was from the north and raised in Winterfell, he was given the name Snow. Basic names that describe the area or region that you're from. This is actually not a law per se, but more of a naming tradition. And for our next question, Wishbone writes, thanks for responding. I guess the one I'm questioning the most is ice. We're told the Starks had ice for 400 years. The conquest happened less than 300 years ago, and Lord Stark laid his sword at Aegon's feet when he bent the knee. We're also told by George R. R. Martin that the throne was made up of the swords of those who surrendered as well as those who were defeated in battle. My thought is that ice should have been part of the throne long before the time of A Song of Ice and Fire. So there's really no definitive answer on how these houses got their swords. We have to assume there was some kind of trade with the old Valyrians before our story started, or that the Targaryens and Valyrians that came over after the Doom brought some of these swords and ended up in trade with the citizens of Westeros before the conquest. As far as ice not being part of the Iron Throne, the reason is because the last king of winter, Torrhen Stark, actually bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror. He did lead a host, but he crossed the trident, and then he thought better of it. He bent the knee, he swore fealty, and being the last king of winter, he was then given the title of Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, so therefore he got to keep ice in that instance, and so it wasn't taken from him. He was actually given a title, given lands, and therefore ice remained with the family. So I believe that's the reason that the Iron Throne doesn't contain swords like ice. But I think that would be different, for example, if he would have actually fought against Aegon. He would have then probably been defeated, obviously, with the dragons. And in that case, they would have probably taken ice and added it to the Iron Throne along with all the other people who actually resisted the conquest. And for our next question, the kiddo writes, Smokescreen, a question that I have for you is, if R plus L equals J, then why is it that Jon Snow has no Targaryen features? Because in book 1, I remember Tyrion saying to Jon, you have more of the north in you than your brothers. So if that's true, why does Jon not have any Targaryen features? It's been established, pretty well established in A Song of Ice and Fire, that Targaryen features are recessive. So Jon actually looks exactly what you would expect him to look like, being the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. We heard, of course, the famous line, the seed is strong, in reference to Robert Baratheon and his bastard sons. And that seems to be the case throughout the entire world of Ice and Fire, as far as black hair, dark hair, versus the silver blonde hair and lilac or purple eyes of the Targaryens. The black hair, the dark eyes, those type of things seems to be more prominent. So you would actually expect Jon Snow to look like he does, being of Lyanna, who is definitely a she-wolf of the north, and Rhaegar's traits would be recessive. So in that sense, the question becomes, for people who believe that R plus L equals D, as in Daenerys may be the child of Lyanna and Rhaegar, or perhaps even twins, which I did a video on as well, the question then becomes, why does Daenerys not have any Stark features? Next question, Christy writes, speaking about watching, it seems gradually magic has been coming back slowly. Do you think Sam will learn magic while at the Citadel? Early in the show and book, Sam tells Johnny he always wanted to be a wizard. Maester Luwin at Winterfell told Bran all who were forging their maester chain tried to earn the magic link, but no one could make the spells work. Was Sam just being silly, or was this some of George's foreshadowing? As far as the part about magic coming back slowly, I'm going to actually do a separate video on that, so I'll leave that for now. But in regards to the question about Sam, I do think actually it was a bit of foreshadowing. If we remember correctly, this was stated in A Game of Thrones, the very first book, in the very first season of the show. Jon did not become a ranger, and then Sam was like,
I always wanted to be a ranger.
I always wanted to be a wizard.
Basically saying we don't always get what we want. But I think that was a little hint that, you know, in seasons or books to come, that Sam would end up at the Citadel to learn some of these things. We know that in the books, at least, he's met more of the mage and he is intrigued by all this kind of stuff, but he's on a mission to find out about the White Walkers and find out more about obsidian or dragon glass, Valyrian steel, how and why it kills them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sam does learn a few tricks. But that kind of goes back to the question about magic and how it works. I talked about in the last video I did on how the Starks got their skin changing or warging ability, magic seems to run through bloodlines as far as magical abilities, and potentially through so-called religions or gods, if there are in fact any gods in this story at all. So the question becomes then, is it possible for regular people to learn magic and learn spells? I think to some kind of low degree, sure, because we see things like glass candles. I believe probably regular people with no magical inherent ability in their DNA will probably learn a few tricks. Maybe he uses that to communicate with John. So I think in some respects Sam will become a very, very important character. I think his story arc is going to be very important as far as, you know, this battle for the dawn, if it comes to that, or the end game. But it's hard to say exactly what he'll learn. I don't think he's got time to become a full-fledged maester as far as the threat of the White Walkers coming so soon. And it's hard to say regarding the Citadel plot line of Old Town, because without spoiling anything in the books for those who haven't read the books, we have a lot of other moving parts going on as well, such as the Ironborn, other maesters and other archmaesters seem to be really against magic or want it to leave the world forever. They don't trust it. The Faceless Man being involved. Hard to say, but I definitely think Sam's storyline will be super important, and I think he probably will learn a few tricks at least. Sam may actually end up being Jon's Quaithe, so to speak, as Quaithe is to Daenerys, so that's definitely a possibility. And for our final question, Ben Stark writes, "Great videos, man. Keep them coming. I don't know if you've touched on this yet, but one of the mysteries I keep trying to decipher are Bran's werewood visions in Book 5. What is he being shown? Love to hear what you think." So yeah, quickly I'll run through these visions that he had in A Dance with Dragons. Once he reached Bloodraven or the Three-Eyed Crow, he begins his training with Yoda. Bloodraven. He's given a series of visions through the werewood tree at the Godswood in Winterfell. And the first vision is basically he sees his father beside the stone, beside the pool in the Godswood at Winterfell, and he's got ice and he's cleaning the blade. Bran then whispers Winterfell, and his father looks up and asks who's there, but he can't see or communicate with him. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That's just Ned. I think it's obviously in the past because at this point he's already dead. So I think that's just establishing that he can see into the past. And then we have Bran back at Winterfell again, and this time he sees his father Ned looking a lot younger without any hints of gray hair. And he seems to be praying to the werewood, let them grow up as brothers, nothing but love between them. And he also says, let my lady wife find it in her heart to forgive. But then he's interrupted again when Bran says father, and then he stops his prayer for a minute. So this obviously is right after Ned brought Jon home. He's praying to the old gods to let him and I believe Robb, since they're about the same age, grow up as brothers. At this point the other kids wasn't born yet. He's also asking the old gods to let Catelyn forgive him. Now you could say that we almost had the big Jon Snow parentage reveal right there until he was interrupted. So you could say he's asking Catelyn to forgive him for cheating and bringing home a bastard son, or he could have said, if he would have been able to finish that sentence, please let my lady wife find it in her heart to forgive me for lying about fathering a bastard child and bringing him home to Winterfell. So in the next vision we see again in the Godswood in Winterfell a young girl and a younger boy playing with sticks or branches as if they're practicing sword fighting. Bran immediately thinks this girl looks like Arya and even thought for a minute that the younger boy may have been him. So with her being described as looking like Arya and then him realizing that he was never beat by Arya like that as far as when they practice sword fighting, then we know this has to be Lyanna Stark and her younger brother Benjen. Some people say it could have been Ned, but Ned was actually older than Lyanna, so I believe this was Lyanna and Benjen playing in the Godswood. And this is just kind of going backwards even further into the past right there in the Godswood at Winterfell. After this, it's described that the glimpses or these visions come faster and faster, and Bran's getting kind of dazed and confused. In the next one, it's described that he sees no more of his father or the girl that looked like Arya, and that again is Lyanna. But he sees a woman heavy with child walking out of the pool and kneeling before the tree praying that she has a son so she may have vengeance. I believe this is probably Ned's grandmother. It's believed that she only had one son, Rickard Stark, and she was the wife of Edwin Stark. So I believe that's what this means, being that she probably only had one son, and we're not sure exactly why she's praying for vengeance here, but I think it has something to do with Edwin may have been killed before Ned's father was born, and maybe that's why she's praying for vengeance. So this is one of the ones that's kind of hard to tell, but again, it's just going further back into the past, and obviously based off all the rest of the visions, this is a Stark woman. And the next one is a long brown-haired girl described as being slender as a spear who stood at the tip of her toes to kiss a knight as tall as Hodor. This is widely believed to be Dunk from the Dunk and Egg stories. He was Sir Duncan the Tall and went out with the young Aegon Targaryen, and it's a completely separate set of stories aside from the Song of Ice and Fire, but a good companion to that, so I highly recommend getting the Dunk and Egg novels. I believe most people think this is old Nan kissing Sir Duncan the Tall. The next vision shows a dark-eyed youth described as pale and fierce, who slices off 3 branches off the werewood tree and carves them into arrows. Now some people think this is Bloodraven because it's described as him using a werewood bow when he's still Brynden Rivers, but I think this is probably Brandon Snow, and he was the bastard brother of the last King of Winter, Torrhen Stark, who I mentioned before, the king who knelt, and he actually wanted to kill the 3 dragons of Aegon's during the conquest. With him carving out specifically 3 werewood arrows, this seems to be Bran Snow, who again was the bastard at Winterfell at the time. And then the next vision shows that, Bran describes it as the trees are shrinking and disappearing, and then another ones pop up and shrink and disappear. And now Brandon's seeing a new set of lords who are described as tall and hard. So I think Bran here is seeing, time slip further and further backwards, and he's seeing now the old kings of winter. Because it's described that some of the faces, he couldn't put a name to them, but he recognizes their faces from the crypts of Winterfell. And then what seems to be the last vision in this little episode of visions is he sees a bearded man who forced a captive down on his knees in front of the heart tree, and a white-haired woman steps forward with a bronze sickle. Bran actually tries to scream again, saying, "No, don't do it," and of course they can't hear him, but then it's described that the woman grabbed the hair of the captive man and slit his throat. So right off the bat, this looks like to be even further in the past. Perhaps this is a sacrifice to the old gods in the actual founding of Winterfell, and what leads me to believe that is that she's carrying a bronze sickle as opposed to some kind of steel weapon. So it's always been described that when the first men came over, they had weapons of bronze, so this was probably the first men, their ancestors, probably founding Winterfell with some kind of blood sacrifice and the pact with the children of the forest. These visions are not really important in and of themselves except for a little bit of history, but it's just showing Bran in his first set of visions through werewood.net that he can actually see the past, and he goes from, relatively current, right before his father died probably, all the way back to the founding of Winterfell. So I think that's really there just to establish what he's going to be able to do, seeing the past, seeing the future, sending messages, sending dreams and visions, helping shape events, whatever that may be, whatever Bloodraven and the Children of the Forest motives are. Bran's going to be super powerful and have a very important role to play in the end game of this fucking story. So anyway, hopefully that helps with those visions and the rest of the questions, and I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. These are always a lot of fun to do. For Q&A videos for Game of Thrones or Star Wars, please comment and leave a tag like for the Q&A or hashtag Q&A or something to that effect so I can kind of see that in the comments. I still try to answer all these questions in the comments, unless it's something that I'm specifically planning to do a video on, like the magic video I mentioned. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Sam will become a wizard? Do you think he'll learn more than just a few magic tricks? How did some of these houses get these ancestral blades? Anyway, thanks again, you guys. Thanks for watching. Got more videos planned. In the meantime, you can click here for the last video I did on The Walking Dead Season 6 Episode 3 review. And do you think Glenn's really dead for you Walking Dead fans? And you can also click here for the last video I did on Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. The popular theory that Luke Skywalker may actually be Kylo Ren and the leader of the Knights of Ren for you Star Wars nerds. If you like these videos, please like, share, and subscribe to get everything. So thanks again, you guys. Thanks for watching, and remember, peace is a lie, there's only passion.